What is going on, everyone? This is Dan Green, joined by my good friend James Roberts.
What's going on, everybody?
Now, listen, long time no Flyer talk. I know I'm very active with my quick takes. I'm very active with Heat Ratio Live at Steam Pub in Upper Southampton. But why have I not been active with the Flyers? Because I don't want to talk about the Flyers. It's just awful. Like, I'd rather stick a needle in my eye. But we had such a good podcast, fun podcast. I got to stay relevant. So I called my buddy James. I'm like, James, we got to talk a little Flyers, and then let's talk a little NHL. And there is nobody better in the business than James Roberts. James, quickly, tell the viewers about yourself and where they can find you.
You can find me right there at the handle you see it on the screen, trying to point the right way. Offside Talk. We're on Twitter. We're on Spotify. We're everywhere you would want to watch a podcast or show, YouTube, you name it. Also, we're over on that little thing called TikTok too. Offside TOK, Offside Talk. Little spin on the name, but good videos up there too. Always having fun breaking things down. But yeah, we're everywhere, man. We're just having fun talking hockey, and that's the way it should be.
Now, if you haven't caught James, he does these amazing previews for his shows, and they're just a riot. Last time we had James on months ago, I did his when they were doing the Predators. He did his little Southern song for the Nashville Predators. It was awesome. And we are Flyer and Ice again with the Heat Ratio Sports Network. We have an amazing group of talent that have joined us. Matty Daddy is come aboard. We already have Fourth and Go coming that's on board. Matty Daddy, Mr. Wrestling, and he covers all sports. He's amazing. Check us out at YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, and you'll see all this amazing programming that I'm referencing and more. All right. So my first question or comment, I have been a Flyers fan, James, since 1975. You're thinking, you look too good to be that old, but you're right. You're right.
Exactly.
I was 7 years old in 1975. The year they were going for the hat trick in 76, they called it. And they haven't been this bad since the 4 years before we acquired Lindros and a few years after he came on board until they became a solid team. But you had the hope because you got Lindros on the team. Then they had that outlier year of 06-07 when they started off awful. They fired Tkachuk and Clark. And it was just one bad year. Then Holmgren somehow put things together, with Tiemann, Hartnell, Giroux was drafted, JVR was drafted, Pronger was acquired, and then they turned it around quickly. But this year, coupled with what I thought was maybe an aberration of last year, it's been the hardest hockey I've had to endure. And I'm just curious, how shocked are you? What's your take from afar?
Well, I'm really shocked, to be honest with you. And when we did our season preview show to start, I had the Flyers and the LA Kings as the teams that I thought would be, making noise, so to speak. And the LA Kings, well, they've held up their end of the bargain, but the Philadelphia Flyers, I thought with all the acquisitions, I thought Ryan Ellis, Ristolainen, you go and get Atkinson, things like that to bring this team along and maybe carve out the Voracek problem from your lineup. And you think this team is going to take the steps. Obviously, they want it to be harder to play against. They want to protect Carter Hart more. They said all the right things. Unfortunately, they didn't do all the right things. This team, sadly, has not performed the way that we all thought that they would, especially on paper. It blows my mind, to be honest with you, because there is a lot of good talent on that team. It just doesn't seem like they can get it together and get it rolling. And I don't understand what it is or what's in the water or what the problem is here, but there's got to be something. I guess big change has to come, and that may come this deadline.
Now, and that's something we'll get to shortly. But what is your thought process regarding the start of the year? They just had a really solid start. They were rolling 3 lines out consistently, and they just had a nice start to the year. Carter Hart looked like he rebounded, and honestly, he's to me he's not to blame at all. Whereas last year I thought he was a disaster.
I
But
would agree with you there.
So how do you go from a team that looked like they had 3 damn good lines, no terrific, there's no Austin Matthews on this team, but how do you no Matthew Barzals, but how do you go from 3 balanced lines that were contributing so well that you couldn't even discern which was the top line to this shit show that they have now? How does it happen?
Well, I mean, you can point your finger over to Edmonton too and ask them the same question. They came out the gate fast as well, and it all unraveled. I mean, I don't know. I look at it like this, okay? We just talked about Austin Matthews. You look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They lose Jake Muzzin. What happens to them? The pin's out on them, and they blow up. It's like the whole team falls apart. So maybe it's the same kind of thing here in Philly. One guy goes down. Maybe it's a key guy, and guys don't know what's going on. But also the coaching situation. We talked about that the last time I was on. The players didn't really get the vibe off the coach. But at the same time, how many times do you let the inmates run the asylum and things have to keep changing behind the bench? Something has to come here where somebody cracks down and says, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And I don't know if it's changing the entire culture, which means maybe you get rid of JVR, maybe you get rid of Giroux, a lot of the older guys in the room, and try to turn it over to the young guys and try to get a fresh perspective. But the way that you lose it is basically not being able to figure out how to get out of it. And that's what good teams are able to do. When you start losing, good teams are able to figure, okay, this is what we need to do. This is how we turn it on. Good coaching, the whole 9 yards, up and down the roster, up and down the management structure. That's what happens. And right now, it just seems like everything's disjointed. Like there's no continuity throughout is what I'm trying to say.
No, I totally get you. But what I just cannot fathom, and I just will never understand is, and we talked about this last show, the year that they had to go to the bubble, where they dominated the bubble to get the number 1 seed, and then they played well in the playoffs till eventually losing to the Islanders. That was Alain Vigneault.
Yep.
How do you shut a guy off the next 2 years the way they did after performing so well under him, finally taking hold of a system, and then Mike Yeo comes in? It's got to be the character of the players on this team. I just don't get it. There's got to be a leadership issue, and I'm not one of these Claude Giroux bashers, because just because he's the captain doesn't mean he's the only leader. But I'm just curious what that locker room is truly like, because it befuddles me how a team can so often shut off a coach. Now Hackstall has the personality of a doorknob, and when they got rid of him, I thought, okay, Vigneault, what a perfect hire. But you go from you shut 2 coaches down, and Mike Yeo, they shut him down already. That horrible loss last night. It's just one of those things. I guess you just can't answer it, but you're now, as a result, you're forced to change the culture, and heads are going to have to roll. And I think not only players' heads, I think the administration. I pray that Comcast, who owns this team, listen, you love them as a kid growing up, the Paul Holmgrens and the Bobby Clarks. They're still part of the upper echelon management, part of the consultation group. And Chuck Fletcher is the son of Cliff Fletcher, nepotism and all that stuff. I think everyone's got to go. And we, for so long, we always bring in old Flyer guys. Well, the old Flyer guys are bringing in, Fletcher's not an old Flyer guy, but he's part of their good old boy network, apparently. And it's just not working.
Well, for me, Fletcher's just an extension. He's just a puppet. He's just there to be the mouth to service whatever needs to be done or what wants to be done by the people that can't call themselves the GM. And that's just my opinion. But I mean, when he was hired, it was the same kind of thing. And I believe that's the reason why, certain people like Hexy didn't work there, because he wanted to take the team his way and do things his way, and they didn't want that. They wanted it done a certain way and felt it was their way. But now you look at this team, and I'm not going to bash anybody on the squad, because what happens is when you have a losing culture, it breeds negativity. And when you breed negativity, it's hard to break that cycle, because what's the old saying? Winning cures everything.
Right.
So if you can't win, then you can't start to cure. But also, now what they're going to do is what Montreal is trying to do with Marty St. Louis behind the bench, is they're going to bring in Danny Briere, and he's going to be around the team. He's going to be in the locker room. He's going to see what guys are part of this, what guys aren't a part of this, what guys are locker room cancers, and what guys do we have to cut out, and what guys are building blocks for the future. And, they may see that Giroux is a guy that they need to keep, but they may see that JVR isn't, or vice versa. Or they may see, hey, we just brought in whoever it is, Ryan Ellis, for instance, and he just doesn't fit, just doesn't work. And, same thing's being said over in Montreal right now about Christian Dvorak. You bring in this player who's supposed to save your center position, and he's fresh deal, but at the same time, it's not working. So you have to look at your talent and say, okay, maybe even though we just got this guy and signed him, we have to send him somewhere else, because this isn't working.
Now the Briere comments brilliant. I really pray he gets more than just a figurehead title. I hope he gets his hands dirty with this team.
I think he'll be the GM at the end of the year.
Yeah, I do too.
I think they're going to wait till. I think he'll have a big say come trade deadline. He'll get his feet wet there, but I really think at the tail end of the season, going into the draft and stuff, he will be the guy leading the charge. He'll be a huge part of this squad. And I think that's what's needed. It's a breath of fresh air. And again, I know it's an old flyer. Everybody just said, well, we shouldn't be bringing in old flyers. But he brings a fresh perspective, a younger perspective. And, maybe he won't be a part of the Yes Boy network, right?
Yeah, but he's not an old flyer from the perspective of he was on multiple teams. So it's a little different than the Holmgrens and the Clarks. Clark played his whole career. Holmgren, but a couple years in Minnesota, was a lifelong flyer. So yeah. I understand how you bring back people that have ties to your organization. So I don't look at Briere as a typical old flyer that's been brought back, but I do understand your point. But I think he's a little different than the typical.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I'm saying, you're going to hear people like, oh, I thought you said you didn't want old flyers. Well, It's a little different with him, because he's been around the merry-go-round. He's seen different things, experienced different organizations. And not only that, he was high up on the list for the Montreal Canadiens as well, for being their GM, right? So he went through that entire GM search. So they thought, and other organizations think highly of him. So it would be right by the Flyers to get him before he ends up being somewhere else and they regret it.
All right. That's all great points. Now, you mentioned the trade deadline. You mentioned some players. Let's start with the captain, 34-year-old Claude Giroux, who's actually had a very good year this year.
Yeah.
Our good friend Zach Kindrachuk, who's often on our show, he was with myself and Nick the Scout, and he didn't think Giroux would fetch much at the trade deadline, and we respectfully disagreed, Nick and myself. I'm looking at a young prospect. Now the rumor is Colorado, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's the big one that's running wild right now.
So like a Chris Newhook and some draft capital. What's your return on Claude Giroux?
For Claude Giroux, you're going to get. So it depends on what the Flyers want to do. Do their scouts want to go with someone that they know as a player wise, like an Alex Newhook?
Alex, I'm sorry. What did I say?
No worries. Do you go after Newhook and say, okay, we want a second and something else, maybe a C tier prospect, or do you say, hey, we want to be able to draft the players that we're looking for, so we want a first, maybe a B or C level prospect, and some other pick, third, fourth, whatever it is, a good package. And of course, maybe Philly adds something else to flip it back the other way to up the value on maybe the secondary pick that they get from Colorado. I do see him going to the Avs. For some reason, I just feel like he's going to go there. It's the team that's most talked about. Of course, there's always sleeper teams out there. Wouldn't he look great in a Tampa Bay Lightning uniform? You know what I mean? Like, That's a team right there. You look at those two teams down there, Florida and Tampa, and they're two teams that want to add. And, they're going to go against each other in an arms race. So they're going to figure it out. The other team that I heard a small rumbling for Giroux was, and I don't know how in the world they do it, but they always seem to find a way, is the Vegas Golden Knights.
Nah, I can't see that happen.
Well, everybody says that, but I didn't see them being able to pull Eichel off either.
Well, they're already sitting Stone right now, and when he returns, now that they're talking about maybe getting rid of Martinez, because I don't see that happen. What we're hearing, and listen, you're more tuned in than I am, but I'm hearing Minnesota, St. Louis if Colorado doesn't work out.
I haven't heard St. Louis. I have heard Minnesota, because you realize for Minnesota, this is the year they have to do everything, because then you have all those big, huge buyout fees coming on your cap for the next couple of years, which really hinders what the Minnesota Wild can do. So they're in a position this year where they kind of have to push the chips. And hey, man, what bigger chip do you push? You either go after a Claude Giroux, or maybe you go after Joe Pavelski, who's another player who's turned the clock back this year too, having a stellar year. But yeah, I definitely, my heart of hearts say the Avalanche, and no pun intended, but I think they're looking for an avalanche of wins come the playoffs, so they can they'll add more. And another player I heard for them, and I think they're barking on that tree, is big Zdeno Chara to the Avalanche on the back end. That is something, it's simmering, but it's something they would love to add in their bottom six. And who wouldn't want Zdeno Chara for their penalty kill and clearing the net out? Especially with the fact that they're not super comfortable with the goaltending in Colorado.
I have a 2-for-1 to offer you, though. I'll give you Rasmus Ristolainen and Claude Giroux, and maybe we can get more back. Forget Big Z. So forget Risto to the Avs. What is he going to garner in a trade?
It all depends on health, I guess, right? He's out right now, I believe, on LTIR. Or LTR, whatever it is. As long as his health is good, Ristolainen should fetch you, I would say, a second and a prospect at the least, in my mind. That's a player that plays a little bit of edge, can do things that a lot of your defensemen can't. We talked about Muzzin with the Leafs. That's the kind of guy. I've been barking on this tree for the Leafs to get a player, and I keep saying the same saying. You need a minute munching, net front clearing, shot blocking defenseman, and that is something Risto can do, and he can fight if he wants to too. So there's a guy that really can break it if he has to.
He fights like a basketball player. So
hey, you know what though? But good on him to have the guts to do it, because a lot of guys don't do it.
Yeah,
right?
No, right. In today's NHL, my God, you're right. Now we'll go quickly. Like a guy like Braun, third rounder.
Yeah, I would say.
Martin Jones. Any teams in need of a solid goalie for the in case factor?
Third, maybe a fourth.
All right.
Just because he wouldn't be coming in to save the bacon, to be the number one, kind of like Ryan Miller was back in the day when he went to St. Louis.
Right,
I don't think he would fetch that kind of pick. But third or fourth for me, probably give him a chance to maybe save a couple games down the stretch.
And let's face it, it's been a shame from the perspective that he reached such an amazing milestone. Keith Yandle did. You got to give him credit for his durability, but his play has been just awful. It almost is. It almost parallels the whole Flyer season.
I mean, you look at Keith Yandle though. You put him on a team, just throw it out there, just for sake. Maybe goes back to Florida or
power play specialist.
Right? Yeah, you limited his minutes. You put him in the position to succeed, and away you go. With the Flyers right now, they need more out of guys than they can offer, in my opinion, for some of them. And that's why you're seeing some of these guys kind of do a little bit of a nosedive.
Now, Yandle we thought was going to be a 12-minute guy, and then I guess with injuries and whatnot, he's played more, and he's been dreadful in a power play at times. But my thinking is, it's just human nature, and especially if you go back to Risto as well. Risto was on so many bad Buffalo teams, and then he comes here, and essentially it's Buffalo all over again. So these guys have to be demoralized. So I'm hoping that the chain of scenery sales pitch could help also with the draft capital. And like you said with Yandle, goes to a good team, gets rejuvenated again. Maybe he'll step up his game. At least that's the hope. Now, let's jump to guys that I don't necessarily think will get moved, but could they? Any shot that the whole cleaning house, you've been underachievers per se, in the Konechny, Sanheimer, Provorovs, in your opinion, get consideration?
Konechny and Provorov, yes. Sanheim, I don't think so at all. I don't think there's any chance he goes anywhere.
And why?
Provorov would be the next one that I'd say is least likely. But if they want to move guys, if they want to scorch earth, this is what they do, right? And you just show everyone that, hey, no one's untouchable. But the thing for me that's bothered me with TK is the end of last year, they brought him in, and this is now common knowledge. Friedman talked about it on 32 Thoughts that, they told him, hey, if your play doesn't elevate, we can move you. We can move you right now. So you need to step it up. Otherwise, we're going to. I don't know about you, but when someone throws that at you like that, and if I don't know if it was framed that way, but that's the way it's been said, it was said to him, that wouldn't really put a burr in my saddle to want to play my absolute best for that team because they're already thinking of ditching you. They're not riding with you through your bad parts while the team in a whole is going through a bad part. For me, I think TK is the most likely to be moved, and I think they'll get a pretty good return on him. To be honest with you, because everybody knows what he can do, and it's just what you just said. A change of scenery is huge, but also allowing a player to succeed in the role that he's supposed to be in is huge. And I say that because you look at certain players when they move around the NHL. Toronto, when Tyson Barrie came over, he wasn't playing like he was supposed to be playing. The second he got the opportunity to, he started to flourish a little bit. So players need to be put in the best position to succeed. So you take a guy like that and you put him on a team, maybe Carolina, and you say, hey, roll with Vinny Trocheck on the second line and go out there and pot some goals and have some fun.
Yeah, I guess as Flyer fans, our hope he doesn't turn into the next Justin Williams once gone. We had a scout on our show. I don't want to mention his name only because little inside information that I don't think he wanted revealed. When there was rumors that Calgary might be interested in Konechny, I think Konechny's from Calgary. He didn't care. He was like, so he has the mentality, I don't care if you can get rid of me. Yeah. And that didn't set well with me either. It's like it goes both ways. So it's like a dual message. If you don't have an interest of really putting your heart and soul into this club, maybe he should move on, and we should find the TK of another club, like rejuvenation for rejuvenation. All right, so we've been talking a lot about the pitfalls of the Flyers. In short, is this a monster long haul rebuild, or could a new hire, maybe a good trade or two, free agency, could they get back in the hunt anytime soon, in your opinion?
I mean, yes, they could. but realistically, what are teams most afraid of? And this is a question that I think a lot of teams need to ask themselves. What are they most afraid of doing? No team ever really comes out and says, we want to rebuild or we're going to rebuild. And this is why. The few teams who have said it and done it, I can list the Maple Leafs. The Rangers attempted to do it, but somehow they smashed all expectations really quickly. So for me, I think for the Flyers, honestly, and I told you this last time I was on, I do have a soft spot for the Flyers. I think they need to scorch earth it, burn it to the ground, and build it back up and do it right. Don't try to retool on the fly. Don't try to add, shiny, fancy pieces. Do it right, build it up, and build the organization back to where you want it. Because right now, doing what you're doing, it isn't working. It hasn't been working, So maybe it's time to just take it to the bottom, bring in the right people in management, and have a plan and stick to it. What do the Sixers say? Trust the process, right? So maybe the Flyers need to adopt a little bit of that and just trust the process.
No, I can't agree with you more. I mean, there's two schools that tie into what you're saying. There's the Buffalo Sabres and there's the modern day Rangers. The Rangers just said, let's play all our young kids and let's see what happens. And my God, look what's happened. Now some of those kids are damn good draft picks as well. But that's I remember, you were pretty firm with your stance. Don't bring up a young kid to a bad team. That being said, If you're going to scorch it, you got to bring up York. You got to bring up Zamula. You got to bring up Forster. You got to bring up Bobby Brink. These
But
kids
that's a little bit of a different thing. What
Yeah.
I mean is bringing up a young guy into a situation like Cole Caulfield last year for the Montreal Canadiens.
when they were in the hunt.
Say we need to score goals. Well, this young guy, we'll put him in the lineup and score goals. And, as soon as that went away, the fan base got on him. And now where's Cole Caulfield? He's not the guy that you want him to be. So there's a prime example of it. My thing is, if you're going to go scorched earth, then you could sell that to those players. Hey, guys, it's not going to be the greatest, but you guys are going to be able to work out your kinks at the NHL level. And away we go. Everybody knows what the expectation is. But if you're bringing those young guys up and saying, hey, we're chasing a playoff spot, we're pushing here, and we have expectations to win, and, then it doesn't start happening, and all the wheels fall off, and those young guys are looking at themselves like, I'm not able to help this team. Am I any good? Is everything falling apart because of me? But if the expectation is that you're rebuilding and bringing these guys up so they have a taste of the NHL and can understand, hey, it's not all, sunshine and rainbows, then it's a different situation. But if you're bringing them to be a savior and Cole Caulfield is now the example of that, then there's a problem. But if it's an expectation that's going to be rebuild, let him play. Let him run out there. That's what the Rangers did, right? They told everybody. They sent out a press release saying, we are going to be intentionally bad for a little while, guys. Bear with us, and we'll be back in a minute. And it turns out it was 30 seconds. It wasn't a minute. They were gone. So I don't know. I think that's the way you can do it. You can play the Yorks and you can play all those guys and get them their experience and get them to have a little cut on the ice. Why not?
I think the slash and burn style has to take place. Real fast, while it's on my mind, because I know I'll forget. And he's going to come up later because he's one of my favorite players in the league. He was my preseason Vezina pick, Igor Shesterkin. An absolute beast. But I had the typical cool, the water cooler, the bar, pub conversation with someone, and I was in disbelief with his thinking. I've been called a Carter Hart hater because I was on him last year. You have an .874 save percentage and you duck on every wrist shot, you're gonna take some heat from me.
Yep.
And I've also been very highly pleased with his play this year. He's got a .912 save percentage, under 3 goals against, with a team that's worse in front of him than last year. So I think he's been not the issue, just been beyond solid. And if he was on a really good hockey team, he probably had like a .930 save percentage. That being said, if you take 50 present and past GMs and say Shesterkin or Carter Hart, what's the vote, say you?
Everybody's taking Shesterkin, in my opinion. I love Carter Hart. Trust me, I love what he did for Team Canada, the World Juniors. I followed him, and I've been steadfast. I told you last time about them calling him up and, ruin his career and all that stuff. I don't want to see it. For me, it's Shesterkin. Just the way he plays and the way he can shift momentum in a game and close the door and make other teams absolutely lose their confidence. And I've seen it with the Maple Leafs, watching him turn away grade A chance after grade A chance when the Rangers are giving up chances left, right, and center, and he's just right there. That's not a knock against Carter Hart. If you told me, you had to take Carter Hart, I wouldn't be upset about it. I wouldn't be mad that he's the goalie I'm building around. But if it was a choice, I'd take Shesterkin.
No, I'm glad that you helped me with my water cooler argument. And I'll take it. I'll ask you this question, see if you have the same mindset. What goalie does he most closely resemble, in your opinion? Like, you could call him so-and-so junior. They're so, to me, similar in their style of play.
I don't know. I get a lot of Carey Price vibes off him.
Really?
Myself.
All right.
That's where I feel anyway.
All right, my vibe was with Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky, the telescopic legs out of nowhere, post to post. I've never seen any. To me, they look like clones with the legs.
Yeah, no, I can see that. For me, I guess demeanor wise, like looking at him as a young player, I get the same kind of like young Carey Price vibes from him. I could feel that. But no, I'm gonna agree with you on Bobrovsky for sure.
Well, we'll take the love child between those two goalies, wouldn't we?
There you go. For Bobrovsky, though, the only problem is that we all know about him is year on, year off. So, you'll have to ride the ebbs and the flows with him or have a damn good backup.
Spencer Knight's on the way.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. So let's take a look around the NHL. I have in front of me the leaders. We'll start with the Met. The Metropolitan, you have Pittsburgh, Carolina, and the Rangers. Now, at the beginning of the year, I had I think Pittsburgh, Carolina, Washington with the Rangers. No, no, I didn't have Pittsburgh. I had Carolina, Washington, and the Islanders with the Rangers and/or Penguins vying for the wild card. I think I said the Flyers too, but I just did that because I was the host of a Flyers show. But I didn't really believe it. But shockingly, the Penguins, good on them. They're an aging club that are matriculating younger players into their lineup, and they're a damn good hockey club. Carolina's a machine. The Rangers are an up and coming machine, and the Capitals just will always be there. So, I mean, do you see any of those four teams? Those are the only four teams that could possibly make it out of the Met. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. One of those other teams like Columbus, New York,
Yeah,
Philly,
they're not.
They'd have to go on an absolute, Ottawa Senator,
Yeah.
St. Louis Blue run to the ages to make it, and hope one of those teams absolutely just have an 18-wheeler go off the cliff and be able to chase it down. That's just not happening. I mean, you look at the spread between Columbus and Washington 63 points, and Columbus with 47. It's just
Right.
It's not happening. That division's pretty much as locked up as it gets.
So yeah, it's just a matter of if Washington gets into the top three and one of the other ones comes out into the wild card. The Atlantic. Now the Atlantic is shaping up the way I thought. Those are the exact three teams that I thought would be the top three in the division. I predicted Tampa to have a three-peat. Florida's right back at it. Your beloved Maple Leafs, just a damn good hockey team. Anyone catching Boston for that wild card?
I would give I'd put a little money down on Detroit.
Yeah, I watched them play last night on NV Streams, ladies and gentlemen, one of our affiliates. For your streaming, all your streaming, go to NV Streams. Now, I caught that game. They lost 6-3. They just beat the Flyers 2 straight games. Good young hockey team. The youth on that team, Mo Sider at defense. It's like that's the kind of drafting I wish the Flyers had done. We thought when we had that run of defenseman drafts where we had when Moran, Sanheim, Provorov, we picked up Phil Myers, Zamula, and we were waiting for one of these guys to just step up their game and be that. I thought Provorov would be a year in and year out Norris Trophy guy. Well, Mo Sider looks tremendous. I mean, obviously Raymond is tremendous, but to have a defender as big and as talented as Sider, I was beyond impressed with the 2 games when he played the Flyers. I don't know how you feel.
Well, here's how I feel more Sider. I took him at the beginning of the year in my fantasy draft. So he's on my team as one of the rookies. Him and Lucas Raymond. I lucked out on both. So, no, I look at Detroit, okay, and I say, what's Boston going through right now that the Leafs went through at one point, that Florida went through at one point? They went through the problem of not knowing who they are anymore. The Bruins have lost Krejci. Tuukka Rask just retired. Linus Ullmark is somewhat what you need him to be. They want Swayman to play in net in Boston. The fans do. They chant for him. Marchand is just running amok. Bergeron is hanging on by a thread. That is a team for me that's ripe for the picking, for a team to catch them, for a young, hungry team, which is what Detroit is. They're only 8 points out. And 8 points out, the only problem is Boston has 3 games in hand over them. So is it impossible? No. And I really said, like I said, I think I put money down the fact that Detroit might catch Boston and knock them out of that spot. And wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, that's the one that is the one in the East that could take place. Other than that, things seem to be set other than the machinations of the top three. In the West, we have the Central. Listen, this might be the most shocking for me. Did you see this? Obviously, Colorado. We all pick Colorado. Most of us pick Colorado as a Stanley Cup final team, if not to win the cup. So that's no shocker.
Nope.
Minnesota to me was a bit of a shocker. I don't know what
Minnesota wasn't for me.
Okay.
I was in on Minnesota. I didn't have them in second. I had them in fourth, but I definitely had Minnesota in there. I didn't have St. Louis there, and I did not have Nashville there.
Right.
I was riding high on Dallas and Winnipeg for sure.
Winnipeg was my Stanley Cup finalist against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So
something, man. Like, I don't understand.
They're killing me.
Another team. You're just like, what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought this was such a obvious step forward year for them, and it's like anything but.
Well, they go and add Nate Schmidt, and obviously they shore up their D a bit. You got Connor Hellebuck between the pipes, and I don't know. Connor's always scoring goals. You got Mark Scheifele rocking and rolling. Blake Wheeler, just never seems to be an aged wonder. He just keeps going. And, the emergence, as much as he's a dink, I think sometimes, Neil Pionk's a good player. I don't like some of the dirty stuff he does, but it is what it is, on that side of things. But I thought that was a team that really would take some steps. And especially, like I said, you had Dylan DeMello, too, on defense. But Connor Hellebuck between the pipes, I mean, that's a surefire Vezina candidate almost every year. You think this team would be rolling with it, but they're not.
Well, for me, and I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, obviously with the wild card, and in the Pacific, you have Calgary, Vegas, and Edmonton. Maybe you could have thought Calgary wasn't going to be one of the three, but I think everyone had Vegas and Edmonton. But as far as the wild card goes, this is the most open of the two conferences.
Yep. No,
you have
100%.
I mean, there's still hope for my Winnipeg Jets to squeak in there. I mean, if they get hot, they have to get, they're 7 points behind Los Angeles for this second wild card. It's a big if, but they have games in hand, and let's just hope they get their stuff together. But Nashville 60, LA 55, Anaheim's a surprise 55. Troy Terry has just been amazing. Dallas has been a surprise. I honestly thought that Cup run a couple years ago was Khudobin just standing on his head. Other than that, to me, they were a mediocre hockey club, but they were right back at it. And Vancouver has been, obviously with the coaching change really juiced them up. But yeah, I still think Winnipeg through Nashville obviously can still have at it. So that'll be an interesting scenario at the trade deadline. What these teams that are 4, 5, and 6 really think of themselves. Are they going to push the chips in, or are they thinking we just can't do it?
I think a team like Dallas, they really want to recoup some assets, especially with the fact that you're about to have to pay Robertson and I think Rupa Hintz are up for contracts. So you're going to have a good part of your cap eaten up right there. So you're going to want guys on the LCs and things like that. And if you can get some good draft capital or good young prospects who are almost ready to step in, I look at a guy like Joe Pavelski for Dallas. That's a team, we talked about him earlier, that you really could deal him somewhere and he could do some damage in the playoffs. He's a playoff performer. And, he also plays with a little grit, a little sandpaper. So, I've been beating the drum. I hope Toronto finds a way to get him there. Put him on a line maybe with Spez and Simmer, let the old men run through the rink and have some fun. But no, I look at the Pacific, though, and I'm just like, I personally do not think the Edmonton Oilers make the playoffs. I don't. I said that when the Edmonton Oilers were rolling in a hot squad in November. I said, this team isn't making the playoffs. You watch. And sure enough, they went and started to prove me right. I know they're holding on to third spot right now in the Pacific, but you got LA with 55, Anaheim with 55, Vancouver close with 50. And then you flip the script on the other side and you have Dallas with 54. So, I mean, it's going to be a tight race. It's going to be a fun race to watch for sure. But, I mean, if you're looking at teams that are probably going to sell off, if they're even a few out of it, I'd say Anaheim. They have a lot of UFA guys that they want to get value for. So, I mean, what do? Do you add and then watch those guys walk away, or do you understand that you have a good young crop coming that's like in the NHL now, and say, hey, we can add to this, we can make this bigger, we can make this better by getting picks or prospects that can jump into our roster and be a part of this organization down the line? Or do you watch those guys walk away after a first round exit, maybe?
It's a tough call because of any league. If you can get into the playoffs as an NHL team, literally anything can happen.
Oh, for sure.
You can say in the NBA, you can't always say that. I mean, generally,
Well, you know, when you start going up against the teams with the big names,
yeah,
it's over. It's done.
Yeah.
You know, you might as well put a fork in yourself. It's nice that you got here. Here's your consolation prize. Now you can go back home.
But the NHL, you get in that dance, anyone has a chance. And I didn't mean to be poetic on that one, but
hey, you're waxing the poetic right there, man.
but seriously, so that's the fine line. You know, a true hockey man. Do they want to? If they know they can, if they can get in the playoffs, and you know, it's a catch-22 too, because the way the ownership and could get rid of a GM. Are you really married to the long haul? If your job security could be based on a playoff run, so it's a catch-20. It's a catch-22. All right,
well,
let's.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. I
was going to say, you know, the same thing could be said about the Leafs. They got in that one year. They squeaked in and played Washington, and you know, for me, I think that was, as a fan, I was excited, but for the organization, I think it was the worst thing that could have happened to them that year, because then the expectations just went whoop. And we talked about young players and expectations and all that stuff. Not that it hurt Matthews or Marner or any of that stuff, but I think it hurt the organization because they rushed things by signing Marlowe and etc. And you look at a team like Anaheim with these young guys, you go into the playoffs, you say you squeak in and you take a good team, you know, you 5, 6, 7 games, and you'll make it look good. And then everybody looks at each other like, hey, maybe we got, you know, some gold here. Let's add. And the next thing you know, the expectations are so high, and maybe they go the same route as Toronto, and it's hard to win because the expectations are just that high that you start ground beating all the guys around you, like the Zegerases and stuff. And we all seen how hard it was on Mitch Marner last year. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, man. You get in, you have some fun, but at the same time, then the fan base expectations go through the roof.
Well, yeah. Anaheim probably doesn't have quite the intensity as Toronto, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So in our little pre-show discussion, we joked around that we probably could have taken a pen to paper at the beginning of the year before the season started and said, let's write our top 10 points leaders, goal leaders, etc. And we'd pretty much have a machination of some of them pretty much in there. But as we look at the leaderboard, Connor McDavid, no surprise, 66 points. Draisaitl, 66 points. Now, Huberdeau, 64. Damn fine hockey player. Didn't expect him to be in the top 3. Nazem Kadri, did not expect him to be in the top 4. Hell of a year. I'll even go as far as saying I didn't think Steven Stamkos would bounce back like this. So any surprises on the leaderboard for you as far as, you know, your point leaders?
Nazem Kadri for sure.
I mean, you know him as well as anyone.
Nazem Kadri for sure, just for the way that he plays and the reputation that he apparently has. And, you know, I guess you can't even say apparently because it's definitely out there. You know, it's great to see him having this in a contract year. We talked to Dater a little while ago about him, and you know, he wants to stay in Colorado, but the numbers aren't going to work, you know, and he'd love to go back to the Leafs, but the numbers probably aren't going to work. This is payday, so he's going to go get paid and play somewhere else. But to see him up there, Steven Stamkos, I'm not actually surprised because it's the same thing. It's the cause and effect, just like the Pittsburgh Penguins. When you see Malkin go down, Crosby elevates. When Crosby go down, Malkin elevates, you know. So same thing in Tampa. When one of those key guys go down, the other guys elevate their game. And that's what Stammer's done this year.
I guess maybe the surprise is his health lasted.
Yeah, that's true.
That's probably where I was leaning. Now, obviously,
Huberdeau, though, I'll say Huberdeau, that is not a guy that I'm surprised by at all. For years, he has been an underappreciated, underwatched player. and now he's up there and arrived, and I'm pumped. I'm beyond pumped because this guy right here has been a superstar, period. And
Yeah.
now everybody's getting to see it just because he's up there in the upper echelons. But this guy is a constant performer. So I'm glad he's getting his due.
Now, other players that have really stepped up their game, Chris Kreider of the Rangers, 33 goals.
Insane.
Nick, the Scout's favorite player. I've known Nick for years, and he talked about this kid named Alex DeBrincat. No one takes this kid seriously. He was the short guy on the Matthews line in juniors, and he's only because people are saying only because of Matthews. No, Nick the Scout always loved Alex DeBrincat, and he's been on fire with 28 goals this year.
Yep.
Dylan Larkin, bounce back, leader of that young club. Troy Terry, a terrific young player. I mean, there's some. Mangiapane had that phenomenal start. Couldn't maintain it, or else he would have had 80 some goals this year. But
yeah,
he was on fire. So any of the players at the top goal scorers that are jumping out at you?
You know what? I've always liked DeBrincat's game. So I mean, he was a player that the Leafs passed over, which is an infamous thing here in Leafland. Man, we could tie anything to the Leafs, but they had the opportunity to take him and didn't, obviously, because at that time they were looking for size and he wasn't it. But you look at Dylan Larkin, you're happy for him because it seems like the Detroit Red Wings have something that they're starting to build towards. And what did we talk about earlier about the Flyers and even the Buffalo Sabres? When you're able to turn that tide and turn things to positives and shut out the negatives, players can flourish and players can play well. And that's what you're seeing with Dylan Larkin. He's getting that opportunity just to rock and roll the way that he wants to, and he's loving it. He's absolutely loving it. Troy Terry is just a good story. I got to pump his tires because my co-host Josh Egan, huge Troy Terry fan. So shout out to Josh. I know he's watching right now, so he's going to blow my phone up here in a minute. But yeah, no. Chris Kreider, man. For years, he's been on the cusp. He's a great player. But this year, he's just taken that next step.
Yeah, big and fast.
Oh, yeah. He's a bullet. Wouldn't it be something to see him win the Rocket, And we just joked around about the Rangers putting out that note not too long ago that we're rebuilding. Then you go get Artemi Panarin, and you get Chris Kreider and all that, Adam Fox, So wouldn't it be something for him to win that trophy?
No, they're a damn good hockey club, and I've been trumpeting them from the midpoint of last year that they're to be taken seriously, and that's why I predict them to make the playoffs. And a lot of people, laughed at me, but they are what they are. Now let's quickly move to the defenseman. The defenseman, this could be an interesting. I mean, if my vote for Norris, not only because I predicted it for 2 straight years, is Cale Makar. But you've got Hedman in the mix, of course. You got Fox again in the mix, but I'm going to go with the plus minus. Ekblad. I think it comes down. Listen, when you got a bunch of guys grouped together in points.
Yep.
Plus minus, baby. And Cale Makar is leading the category. Well, actually, the leader is Devon Taves, but, another great story. A very solid defenseman that the Islanders, I guess, had to let go for salary reasons. But he's been a solid player for Colorado. But as far as, Victor Hedman, you can't go wrong. He's just an absolute beast. But who is your preseason Norris Trophy winner?
It was Cale Makar.
Okay.
I said Cale Makar off the jump. Shout out to Chris Letang, though, hanging around too, hey?
Yeah.
Another player that health is not a friend of his, so to speak. So to see him up there in the tops of the D is pretty cool. But no, I definitely picked Cale Makar. I mean, you can't go wrong with Adam Fox or Victor Hedman or even Roman Josi for that matter.
Right.
But, yeah, I agree with you. Aaron Ekblad is another player. You talk about Florida Panthers. We just talked about Huberdeau. Ekblad's another guy that really doesn't get a lot of love because he doesn't really get the shine that a lot of these guys get for the stage. I mean, look how hard it is for the Colorado Avalanche to get into the conversation of people talking about them. They literally have to be absolute world beaters. And they got guys like Rantanen and McKinnon, Kadri doing this thing, Devon Taves, Cale Makar, you name it, right? These guys are all doing well. I don't know if you can see it, but this guy right here is an absolute camera hog, and he's just trying everything in his power to be here. So
he's a quiet camera hog, though. God bless. God bless. He's a quiet camera hog.
Oh yeah, no, he just wants to be here.
All right. We'll take all dogs on our. We've had a few dogs on our show. Don't worry about it. But all right. So I know time is of the essence. I just wanted to quickly go over our defensemen. There's so many. I mean, Morgan Riley's having a solid year.
Yeah, since Riley signed that, there's a thing, right? Everybody right now, I just want to say this quickly because
Go
I
ahead.
haven't say this on my show yet. Jack Campbell is wavering a little bit in Leafs Nation, and a lot of people are starting to say that. Contract talks, I don't care what any player says, it messes with them because Jack Campbell's a guy, well, especially if you're an emotional guy. And Jack Campbell and Morgan Riley, both emotional guys. Morgan Riley signs that deal, and his play turns around almost instantly, and he starts scoring at a clip that we're used to seeing him score. It's one thing to not know what your future is going to hold, but if you're a Nazem Kadri or a player who knows he's going to free agency, then you go out and blow the doors off, have a career year, go get paid. But a guy like Jack Campbell, who hasn't had really much stability and really hasn't been a 1A goaltender for very long, really hurts between the ears. And you want an organization to want you. And the talk around Toronto is all the fans wanted Morgan Riley gone for a good haul. They wanted to trade him for picks or something younger. And, oh, we're not going to be able to afford him. So walking him out the door. But the second he got that extension, the confidence was back. The swagger was back. Morgan Riley was basically back to what we expected. So I'm feeling the same thing for Jack Campbell right now between the pipes. He's got to get the extension done. And once he does, it'll calm his waters and away he'll go. But I think that's a huge, huge thing that people don't think about. They always think of the guys having career years and contract years, but they also don't see the other side of it. That some players just don't perform well under that pressure. Everybody always talks about players want stability in contracts. Think about that. You're going into your final year of your contract. You have nothing there. Everybody's talking about you. Everybody's saying you're going here, there, and everywhere. It's got to mess with your psyche a little bit. And we all know goaltenders between the years is the biggest part. Biggest muscle they got to flex.
Now, speaking of goaltenders, quickly, I know we have to move on. Obviously, I like Shesterkin as, as the Vezina winner. Your thoughts on goalie competition for Shesterkin?
There really isn't much. Jack Campbell, when he was on fire, I would have said was in the conversation.
Right.
But now, like I said, waffling a little bit there. It's between Vasilevsky and Shesterkin, in my opinion. Again, though.
How about Markstrom? He's having a nice year.
Not for me. Not for me.
Okay.
Not for me. Because it's recency bias is what it is. And what do you see the most of? Who do you hear the most about, though? Every time you turn around, you hear about Vasilevsky in a big save. Or you said it yourself, Shesterkin, just the way he plays. The way he can turn it, and I said too, turn a game, right, and turn another team off. I don't hear enough about Markstrom to say he's in the same conversation as them. Okay. Is he having a great year? Yeah, but I don't think he's having the same kind of year those two are. And I don't think he's as big as a difference maker for the Flames that Shesterkin is for the young Ranger kind of squad, or that Vasilevsky is for that sometimes run and gun Tampa Bay team, man.
And injury depleted at times Tampa Bay team. No, I agree with you. I just wasn't sure in the States, obviously, we're not going to hear much about a team from Calgary. But in Canada, I wasn't sure what type
of... It's the same thing, right? I mean, I don't hear much about...
Okay.
I'd like the Flames. You hear about the Flames as a whole, but when you talk about the goaltending, that's not something you hear about. Now, Edmonton goaltending is all you hear about.
Okay. So, our next segment, I should have prepped you before the show. Let's see if you have a good memory from the last time you're in a show. James, what time is it?
Penalty box.
Oh, God bless. Yes, it's time. Now, I had to be cute on that penalty box. I had the Flyers in a penalty box sitting in a hot tub because that's the kind of year it's been. But
Old Boys Club.
Yeah, so the penalty boxes, we have various feel-good topics, tough guys, best jerseys. I mean, you can't say uniforms, best jerseys. We've done draft do-overs. That would be a great topic for you to have, for you to be on the show for draft do-overs. We probably could bring up both our teams. But this topic is to honor Black History Month. And we texted back and forth, and we went over some of our favorite NHL athletes to represent Black History Month. And our first two were identical. You said I got to go Simmer and
Iggy.
and Jerome McGinn. So, and that's the same two I went with. So, obviously, Simmer spent most of his career with the Flyers. He was our skilled enforcer, team leader, and it was just we thought he was aging out, and his skill was going south. And we try to get, and we got a terrible return for him. Actually, we got a great return for him, but we got rid of the great return. We got Mike Hartman for him, and we got rid of Mike Hartman for Lance Pitlick. So there you have it. But and Jerome McGinley is the 500 goal scorer and a Hall of Famer. So tell me what makes you love those two.
For Jerome McGinley, for me, he's just a constant leader. He's a guy that had the respect of everyone he played against. He wasn't a guy that would back down. He didn't let anything stop him. There was no barriers for him. He was going through at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He was a skilled guy. No one was going to tell him no either. I just like what he brought to the ice. I like what he brought off the ice too. He was a great, and still is to this day, a great ambassador to the game. And, hockey is better with Jerome McGinley in it. But, I mean, can you find anybody that will say a bad thing about Jerome McGinley? The only thing you'll ever hear is guys that say how hard he played and how much he cared, how much he wanted to win for Calgary and how much he wanted to win wherever he went. Even when the whole debacle between Pittsburgh and Boston, the trade, whatever happened there was no ill will anywhere. Everybody just wanted to have Jerome McGinley to be a part of their team. So I love Iggy. I don't cheer for very many teams outside of the Leafs when the Leafs get eliminated from the playoffs, but I definitely was on the Red Mile bandwagon cheering for Iggy when they faced the Flames, and I really wanted to see them hoist that Stanley Cup just because of the quality player he is.
No, that's a terrific answer. And obviously, I don't mean to disparage Wayne Simmons, but he's a poor man's Jerome McGinley, a guy that will drop his gloves for any teammate. And he had multiple 30-goal seasons, but obviously, McGinley was prolific, over 500 goals and over 1,000 points in his career. I added, I don't enjoy playing against him, but I've always respected PK Subban, former Norris Trophy winner. He, at one point, you felt like he was a Drew Doughty type player, just a linchpin defenseman wherever he went. And unfortunately, his game hasn't been what you're expecting, what you expect of him since he's been with the Devils. Yeah. Some defensemen age well. Drew Doughty's still playing very well. Zdeno Chara is not playing like he used to, but he's 44. But in his late 30s, he was still a damn good defenseman. Yep. PK, for whatever reason, his play has dipped drastically. But in his heyday, he was as good as they got. Your thoughts on PK Subban?
For me, PK Subban, you're born and bred in Toronto, not to like Montreal Canadiens and anybody who plays for them. But I really like PK Subban. I'm huge in giving back to your community and being a part of it, and what he does for the Children's Hospital and what he does for families and taking kids out and doing all those things. That's huge. It's huge for the game, but he's also a personality. And I think the NHL needs personalities like that, needs people that are not afraid to come out of their shell and have fun and show everyone that hockey is not just, wearing a suit and heading to the rink and scoring goals and doing that stuff. You can have fun with it. And that's what PK Subban did. And that's what PK Subban does, right? I mean, it's the PK show for a reason. I love what he brings on the ice, and I love what he brings off of it. I mean, you can say that about everybody on the screen right now, but you look at PK Subban and just the impact he has playing and then the impact he has off the ice. And he leaves a mark wherever he is, and that's the PK special right there.
No, he's definitely going to be a legend in the booth or pre or post game shows for a national network. He's very talented. Now I have Dustin Byfuglien up there because I've just always respected his game. Very versatile player. I mean, obviously, I'm not a hot take per se, but forward, moved to defense, 6'5". He could have been just an absolute terror on the ice as far as an enforcer if he wanted to play that role. But he was actually a gentle giant, all things considered. I mean, he hit you, but he didn't look to cause mayhem. And I thought he was just a damn good hockey player. And I wish I wish he was still playing, to be honest with you.
There's a lot of people. There's a reason why when Winnipeg showed him during Wheeler's 1,000 game presentation that everybody popped in that rink and everybody was pumped up. It's Big Buff, man. He was the guy that settled things down. I mean, one of the biggest memories I have, I think, is when he was with the Jets and he just grabbed the two guys by the scruffs of their neck and threw them out of the scrum. And they both looked like, no, we're not bothering with that. You know, he's just so versatile too. Like you said, he was a forward, he was a defenseman. He's just a player that you marvel at what he can do. And at the peak of his powers was absolutely a beast. Whether it was scoring goals, getting assists, throwing hits, he would do it all, and there was zero hesitation. And I'm with you 100%. I wish Buffalo was still around. I still think he's got a good couple of years left in him if he ever wants to come back.
Yeah, and obviously you have to have the Hall of Fame great goalie Grant Fuhr up there. And it's funny, obviously his pads are painted. He was one of the goalies that had decorative pads back in the day. But he played in the brown pad era, as I call it, where the equipment really didn't change much from the 60s to the mid 80s. So his career goals against average is, I think, 897. It's under 900. So you don't think a Hall of Fame goalie is ever going to get in the Hall with a 897 save percentage, but he was such an acrobatic goalie, and just part of that legendary hockey team with Messier, Gretzky, Lowe, Coffey, et al. They're just endless, and Grant Fuhr was amongst them. I don't know if you got to really watch him play live as a youngster that you are, but he was a fun goalie to watch, and in crunch time, he shut it down. Just a damn good goalie. And the final guy on our list is Donald Briere. Nick the Scout, who couldn't join us tonight, asked me to put Briere on the list. Just a great enforcer. That's pretty much what he was. You didn't rely on his
great enforcer, but you know what? Again, one of the nicest people you ever meet. I've got to have a couple small conversations with him. Just the nicest guy ever. Him and George Laraque, by the way, both absolute gentlemen of the game. And you're like, wow, you always expect him to be kind of like a little gruff and rough with you, but absolute gentleman.
That's good to hear. I know Briere, when he retired or was kind of forced out of the NHL, as it were, he kind of went on those enforcer tours, which, unfortunate. Whereas Laraque, I think, actually did not enjoy that role, even though he was probably the greatest of all time at it, because I've never saw Laraque lose a fight. But Briere was just a, great enforcer, played for Montreal, one of your favorite teams, Vancouver, the Flyers. He bounced around, but he was a scary dude, but thankfully a good dude. Yes. So listen, James, I know your time is precious, and I really appreciate it. He is James Roberts. You have to check him out at Offside Talk. I am Dan Green at DMG Teach, part of the Heat Ratio Sports Network. I beg you, I implore you, go to YouTube, subscribe, and check out our fantastic programming. So on behalf of James, I'm Dan. Have a great week and good hockey, everyone. Stay safe.